Hello folks, I'm L.A. Little with TA Today, and today I'm going to bring you another edition of the physical uranium. I've looked at it several times with you. We've been talking about it being in a range. We have to go way back to this bar when we talked about it breaking into a range. We can look at that when we get to the weekly. But the question is it going to drop? Is it going to come back and test into this bullish retest regen? Now, if you know me and you know Neoclassical, bullish retest regens occur after breakouts on a swing point high. And if it were to come back in here, it would be a sweet buy. Now, personally, I don't really want to see it come back into here because, I've added several times. I started back here. I added, I don't know exactly where all the spots were, but I know I added on this breakout. So any of these adds would actually be underwater if it were to come back and test. So personally, I don't want to see it come that deep. Probabilistically, it's probably not going to come back that deep. It's probably going to hold this range up here, and I'm going to show you why I believe that. One of the things I'd like to tell you though, and I'd like to get you to do, is hit the subscribe button if you enjoy my material. And even if you don't want to subscribe, please hit the like button so that the algorithms pick it up, give it a little bit more visibility to others out there that might want to see something like this. Now, back to the chart. So that's the monthly, but let's go to the weekly here. Let me go grab the weekly for you, and there it is. Okay, so this was a little busy chart. I've marked all these things up ahead of time, but what I want to do is I want to tell you why I believe this is still in the range. Now, the first thing I want to note is the lower lows and lower highs. The classical is going to tell you, hey, that is a bad thing, right? They're going to say that's no good, right? Why? Well, because that defines a downtrend. That's classical theory, right? Downtrend is a series of lower lows, lower highs, and that's exactly what you got going on. So is this in a downtrend? I would argue no. Matter of fact, my charts tell you no. They say it's sideways. Why is it sideways? Well, because if you go back here and look, it went bullish back here, reconfirmed bullish on another breakout there, and then charged all the way up to this point, finally topped out, and finally has broken this swing point low. After a long consolidation, it finally breaks the swing point low. Now, if you go back to the video prior to this one, you'll find that there I said, we kind of need to break a swing point low. I kind of hoped it would happen here, but it didn't. And the reason I wanted it to happen there was because that would have made that would have reset the MTTFs, the mean time to failure of the trend, much earlier, and probably given us a better shot of springing higher. But it didn't happen there. It finally happened over here. And so, I don't tell the market what to do. I just follow what it does. And what it did is it finally broke right here. And so now we have what? We have a bearish retest regen. That zone is outlined for you. It's based on the highs and lows of the prior swing point that was broken. And if you look at this and push it down, we're attacking with more volume. Odds are about 62% that this thing is going to regenerate to the downside. That's a bad thing. So we don't want that to happen, right? But that's what the odds are. But what I'm going to show you that might not happen. I'll show you why as we go to the daily chart. Why is this probably a range? Well, because it hasn't told us anything different than that yet. This range that we see from about 25.5 up to the highs around 33.80 is still a range until this truly goes to a bearish trend. And we don't have that. We just have a sideways trend. So let's not forget that, and let's not rush off and assume we have something else. Now, why do I believe we may actually see that retest regen on the weekly fail? Has to do with the way the daily is set up. And let's look at the daily. Now on the daily, you got a break down here and another break down there, making this bearish, right? So we've got bearish on this one. And why is that? Or we got two swing point lows that were broken, right? This one and that one. And when they break, that changes trend, and trend changed to bearish. Now, if we, and actually we broke this one back here too, So when we broke the bearish, this was a reconfirmation actually, what does that do? It sets up the retest regen on the push back up. And and that's supposed to happen within 1 or 2 bars. We got a quick push back up on this bar. That bar got back into this one, which is what it was supposed to do, and got back into that one, which is what it was supposed to do. So those two have been tested one time already. Now, I'm going to clean this up and we're going to look at it a little bit farther. So we got a retest regen of this bar, and this bar has already taken place one time right here. Okay, now what do? We break again, breaking this bar, and now we finally, well actually once we broke that bar, we actually came back in and tested it as well right here. So that's a test of this bar one time, but it didn't test those twice because it didn't get high enough. So each of those bearish retest regens have been tested once. What do? We regenerate lower, which is exactly what's supposed to happen. As it gets down here, it finally turns, comes back up. Now what is it doing? It's retesting for the second time. And that second time, the odds are not nearly as good that it's going to regenerate to the downside. But it did. It actually closed on Friday at a low that was below those sweep point lows one more time. So if it generates one more time back up in here, that will be the third test. And when you get down to the third test, you're down into sub 30% probability of regenerating again. If that's the case, and if it's going to try and push higher, what is it going to do? It's going to break these, which would mean it would end up somewhere in this area, which is about 29.20. So that's the daily telling us that more than likely this thing's going to try to pop up to about 29.20 at a minimum. And what does that do for us if it does it? Well, if it does, and we go back to this weekly, 29.20 is where? It's back over this swing point high. And that would break that one and confirm this range that we're talking about. So my thesis going into this week is that we're actually going to see the daily lead the weekly back to the top side. We're going to get the regenerate failure, and that's going to give us a range, which is what we have thought all along ever since the breakdown back here in this area, which is what we highlighted, what is that, 5 months ago now? Back then I told you I'm going to trade the range. I'm going to keep a core position, right? I've talked about it many times. I'll repeat it one more time. Keep a core position. So in other words, let's say whatever amount you have, you keep 50, 60, 70%, whatever you want to gamble with. You trade that gamble money, and you're trying to buy the lows of the range, which is where we are now, right? On the idea that eventually this does the continuation to the top side. And by the time you do that, hopefully you've made some money in here while you're doing it, and you've made your size larger so that when it does break out, you've got even more than you had when you came into this big first move. That's it. That's where we're at. That's the thesis. We'll see what the market wants to give us next. Take care. Till next time. See you.